The FT today has a couple of articles that tie into the subject of the lecture, in fact. Two things about sort of financial reform. There's one here in the second section called Regulators in Long-Term Debt Plan for Big Banks. Increased issuance of long-term debt could gradually lessen banks' reliance on short-term funding markets, where borrowing generally is cheaper. They're talking about particular kinds of long-term bonds too that might be bail-inable. So they're talking about traditional banks here that have loans and deposits, and money market funding is the short-term funding that they're worried about. And if there were bond funding, subordinated bond funding, and equity capital, okay, the notion is that the more of this there is, the more safety there is. If the loans go bad or something like that, these are the subordinated tranches. The more you depend on money market funding, you're going to have liquidity risk here. You're rolling this over, and it can make banks vulnerable. So one of and this is very traditional from Basel 1, 2, 3, notion of the fraction of assets that are equity, focusing on capital adequacy, that sort of strategy for making banks safe. Here they seem to be moving now to not just the capital tranche, the equity tranche, but also subordinated bonds and bail-inable bonds, bonds that convert to equity if the bank runs into trouble according to some measures or something. So, but this is all related to traditional banking, not the kind of modern banking that I'm going to talk about today, sometimes called shadow banking. But there's an article about shadow banking too, in a way. 3 pages later, regulators wrestle with hidden risks in swaps shakeup. And this is talking about the attempt to create clearinghouses or central counterparties for OTC derivatives, for over-the-counter derivatives. And I'll just read you a paragraph here. By pushing for standardized interest rate swaps and credit derivatives, which protect against interest rate and default risks to be traded over exchanges and cleared through CCPs, regulators want to increase transparency. So that is to say price transparency, so that people know what the prices are, so that dealers can't sell things at different prices to different people. Increase transparency, ensure adequate collateral or margin in securing deals, we're going to talk about that today, and prevent taxpayers paying the bill the next time a crisis strikes. So this idea of central counterparties, for now we understand what these swaps are, right? Interest rate swaps and credit default swaps. So you're going to see today, I'm going to talk about that this is in fact a key issue in the regulation of the emerging new market-based credit system, focusing on these central clearinghouses, as opposed to this Basel business of equity in the banks themselves. So we see just a couple of pages away, old banking and new banking, okay, in the FT, talking about both of them.